On Production is brought to you by Wrapbook, the production industry's only on-demand payroll platform. With Wrapbook, you can pay your crew with a click and track all your costs in real time, all in one place. To find out more about how Wrapbook is transforming the way productions pay their crews, visit wrapbook.com.
Welcome to On Production, brought to you by Wrapbook. In On Production, we dive into the stories and expertise shaping the film industry today. In this episode, we're joined by Lucas Harger, a distinguished film and commercial editor, partner, and supervising editor at Outpost, under the St. Louis-based film production company, Brewton Strobbe. Lucas brings his talent to the forefront with 2 sports documentaries, Clemente and Lions of Mesopotamia, featured at the 2024 South by Southwest Film Festival, and with over 10 feature films to his credit, an Emmy for The Road Through War Road, and a Silver YDA Award at Cannes for Sleep Well My Baby. Lucas's editing skills tell stories that captivate and move audiences. I want to explore your approach to storytelling, Lucas, and so thanks so much for joining me on Production.
Yeah, thank you. This is awesome. Happy to be here.
Can you walk me through your journey into film and commercial editing? What drew you to this field?
So for me, I grew up in rural Michigan, but there's a lot of lakes, and so there was a vibrant wakeboard community. And so I came at it kind of through a sideways. A lot of people will talk about like making skate videos to start out, stuff like that. So mine was all about like wakeboard videos, and wakeboard videos always had like a narrative through line. So and a lot of these people that I was making these videos for went on to ride for the X Games and were sponsored. It was like a really cool community to be involved in. And so I would start making these videos for them and shooting and editing, but everything was always about the story and trying to get to the edit. And I liked movies, but I was never necessarily drawn from a, cinematic standpoint. Like it wasn't, Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jurassic Park made me want to make movies. It was more of like making these little videos with my friends and then us all coming around a TV screen and watching it together. And that was the addicting part, is like we made something that's like entertaining. It's fun to watch. And so it was always that communal. For me, it's always been the communal aspect of filmmaking that I love, which in post-production, specifically editing, it's like you're constantly on to the next project. And so your projects are just churning. You're constantly collaborating with people, working with people, as opposed to a director who, especially in the feature, will have like one every few years. I'm like, once this one's wrapped, I have another one on its way. So that's always been my heartbeat and what I loved about that. So from Michigan, it was just kind of always freelancing and like meeting different people, picking up different skill sets. I ended up graduating with a music business degree, moved into St. Louis and just started freelancing all of the things: design, production, editing, web development, whatever, just kind of all of the things. But I'd always loved film and making film, and specifically editing. I hate production. And so for me, it was like a slow funnel down to when I landed here at Brewton Strobbe as one of the internal editors to really service the production that we had going on. That's where I could just sell all my production gear and hyper focus on editing, and then just hone that craft and continue to push. And then it was, a lot of different relationships with people that I had met along the way that I started to bring in some work and start to build the Post House. And so it's kind of roundabout and not super traditional. I never lived in New York or LA or any really major market. This is definitely the biggest city I've ever lived in. And so it was just about that relationship, connection, and like finding cool people.
I think it's really neat that you've been able to carve out a wonderful career in post from St. Louis, from a place that is not New York or Los Angeles. And you've been making some really awesome films with filmmakers. I mean, I think you've got like 10 feature films under your belt. Like, how has your editing style evolved over time?
So we do a lot of commercial work as well. And so it's really that combination of commercial and long form storytelling that I think there's a lot that you can explore from an editor standpoint. And so the evolution started with me in mostly short form and like getting in, getting out. There's an economy of seconds, frames. You literally have a very defined amount of frames you can work with a 30-second spot. This is it. And so it was the economy of storytelling. It was the setting up a goal and then achieving the goal. In this case, it would be for the brand, which is really fun and it's still something to do. And then it's pulling in that kind of, it's pulling in those sensibilities to the long form format that I think really helped me. And so you can really start to craft and hone pace and tone and rhythm from a microscopic standpoint, and then start to zoom out and do it macro. And so for me, I'm always trying to find for when I'm starting to cut a feature, I will watch down all the footage, and then I'll start to just pull a little thread that I find interesting and get in the weeds, and then just kind of, let it unravel from there. And so it's been that balance between commercial work, which I still love and I do a lot of it. It's been the balance between the commercial work and the long form. And then those sensibilities, they'll feed into each other in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's really inspiring. I've always loved commercials. So, at Wrapbook, we support the totality of the entertainment industry, live events, commercials. But I think we really got deep into commercials here because my own personal journey as a producer was in commercials. And I just loved that you could, from pre through post, really get to work at a scale in film that was at the same level of a major studio motion picture. It's just that you're truncated into 30 seconds. But your sequences are still super complex. Your storytelling is still incredibly complex, but then it's just squeezed in. And you learn to respect the value of every second. And that's really cool. That's really, really awesome. I mean, do you feel like you have a bias for being almost too fast paced in your edits? Do you slow it down? I'm really curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do punchy edits, that's for sure. And I really juicing things up and going on roller coasters. And I smashing emotional shifts to be close, take you to the mountaintop and then drop you off. And now all of a sudden the ground has been pulled out from under you. And I really do truncating those emotions, but I also love sitting in moments. And so for me, a lot of that, that more slow cinema, that more adopting things that would traditionally be, and this is always in collaboration with the production, but, adopting those things that do feel a little more like Ozu or Bergman, or Tarkovsky, finding different elements from the masters and weaving them in. And it is that understand when to not cut is as important as understanding when to cut. And so while I have a propensity to love to truncate emotions, it's also really fun to sit in a moment and just let it breathe and let the screen and the speakers do the work.
I love it. The Road Through War Road won an Emmy, which is remarkable. Can you share your experience working on that documentary?
That was through the production company. So we actually also did production. It was in collaboration with Cannonball, who's an ad agency here. And it was started off as a branded content piece, just a couple of, I think the goal at the beginning was 3 to 5 minute piece. And they went up to War Road and kind of shot the story. Just so many NHL players have come from this super tiny town. And so it was what's happening in this town that would produce so many incredible hockey players. And so it started off as a short piece. We cut it, and then the agency, the creative directors and the director, they were just this feels like it could be longer. Can we make this 7 or 8? And so we took the footage that we had and made it longer. And then the brand Enterprise was I feel like we should just make a short documentary that could air on NBCSN. Can we do a 27-minute piece? And it's with more production, absolutely. And so we started to work on what would it look like as it expanded. So it was awesome, and the brand was so incredible to work with. The ad agency was so amazing to work with. They understood the goals of the piece, but then they also understood that it's TV and it's storytelling and it's a longer format. And so it was really fun to collaborate with them in that way. And so, yeah, that project was super special. It was a lot of collaboration. It was a long time period because it started off as a 5-minute thing and ended up as a 25-minute piece. And so it went through a lot of iterations and morphing of what is this, and some exploration in the edit and in production. But at the end of the day, it was a great piece. It was super awesome to work on. And it's one of my favorites that I've done for sure.
That's awesome. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit to something that just kind of came out, I believe was really exciting. Lions of Mesopotamia. It tells a really powerful story amidst conflict. Tell us about the project. How did you approach editing this project? It's a sensitive but yet compelling narrative. What was the balance like?
Yeah, so the film is called Lions of Mesopotamia, which is the nickname of the Iraq national soccer team. And it follows the 2007 team as they're going through the Asian Cup, which is, there's the World Cup, and then right below the World Cup is the Asian Cup. It's the second most watched soccer tournament in the world. And so it follows the team as they're making their way through that tournament. But the backdrop and the setting is the sectarian civil war that's happening and what that is doing to the country as this team contains all of the sects, all the Sunnis and the Shias and the Kurd, like all of them on this team. And so it's following that team, but then we step back and we look at how this team came together in 2000 under the Ba'athist regime with Saddam and Uday, and then we followed them into 2004 Olympic tournament, which was also right when the U.S. invaded Iraq and Baghdad, and the country fell, and then coming out of that into sectarian. And so it kind of explores. I've said it's kind of the tragedy within this time frame, the tragedy of Iraq as told by the national team. And so it's a super powerful story. There's so many facets, so many intricacies, culturally, religiously, language. It was a beast to kind of wrangle and to make sense of all of the footage that we had. And so we always wanted to keep the Iraq story centered. Lucian was a war photographer in Iraq during these years and Afghanistan. And so he had been there and he had told, in a lot of respects, the American side of the story, but now he's going back and we're looking at it through the Iraqis' eyes. And so he had his understanding of, while he was there, what it was like, and all of this kind of fell into and rolled into the film.
How do you balance kind of the elements of war, football, the story, to maintain the film's space and kind of emotional impact? I had the chance to speak with some documentarians at Smarty Pants who did Stranger at the Gate, which was an awesome film, nominated for an Oscar. And they had actually had an experience of like playing with the spacing, the feel of the edit, it really not resonating, going back to audiences with new cuts and really like workshopping it. Like, is that something that you did with this film, or how did you guys kind of get your heads around how it was hitting emotionally, but then also like the story that it was telling?
Yeah, we wanted the play with the film and the cut and the pace and what the football does and what just the tension of the moment was. We always wanted the football to be the payoff for the setup, and the setup is really the context of what's going on in the country and what's going on politically and what's going on through these wars. And so we explored through the players' eyes these more intense and huge topics of war and their government being taken over and the sectarian tensions and all of that. So we explored that geopolitical, that cultural aspect, and then we let the games just be the payoff to that. So we understood what was on the line. And so we didn't want to infuse necessarily too much unless it was very natural, i.e. the announcer is bringing it up. There's Iraqi announcers and they're talking about what's going on in the country. And so, but we didn't want to muddy the waters too much by having too many voices just break in to a gameplay sequence and be like, this is why this was important. If we had done our job, you should know why this is important without us having to tell you why it's important. And so for us, it was like always working with the context, how we're going to set it up, and then we're just going to let the game play. And like, obviously there's music and it's montage and it's pushing, but we didn't want voices breaking in. We didn't want voices just like crushing in and like having to explain something. And so all of the work was before we got to the tournaments. And there's kind of a tournament that anchors each of the acts, the movements, the Saddam and Uday, U.S. invasion, sectarian civil war. So there's those things that anchor each tournament and give it its own personality. And so that was something we were constantly talking about. Let's do all the work up front and then just let these gameplay sequences pay off.
Really cool. It's nice that you had people understand the game, the rules of a game. And so like, that's a really beautiful way to kind of finish that off. Let real life, within the timeline that you built in your edit, lead to this thing. That's awesome. So the films were at South by Southwest. The time of us recording this, that just happened. How was it? Did you get to go? Did you get to watch audiences engage with the film?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was super fun to go. And so, as you mentioned, we also had another feature there called Clemente. And that one, Chent Steinbrink was the lead editor. I was the supervising editor. And then on Lions, I was the lead editor. But we also did sound design and mix on Lions. We did color on both of the films. And then Elise was the story producer on both films. So it was like there's a whole team
We were
environment.
busy. The whole
Yeah, we were busy.
yeah.
Yeah. So we all went down for the screenings to South by, and it was amazing to sit in a theater. And like, yeah, it's cool to see it on the big screen, but it was really cool to watch it with that many people who had never seen it, and to get their reactions. And, you know, film festival audiences and maybe specifically, I don't know, South by, they were like very vocal and like very engaged, you know, with gasps or they were just like very vocally in it, which was super fun. And so like these moments that you talk about hitting, are they going to hit in this capacity, in this way? It was really awesome to see that hit. And then, yeah, just like having the conversations, and the Q&As were cool, but then having the conversations afterwards where people were just like, you know, catching on to all the things that you had hoped that they would catch on to when you're in the cut. It's like, do you think someone's going to notice and realize X, Y, and Z, like what we're doing to connect this thought to this? It's just like, yep, they sure did. So that was a lot of fun to be able to do that. And then, yeah, just that whole time was just wild with the two films, and a lot of screenings and a lot of conversations. So yeah, it was amazing. South by was awesome.
I love it, man. Lucas, how do you stay creative and kind of maintain your passion for editing amidst tight deadlines and commercials, technical aspects of the job, AI is emerging? We were talking about that before we started recording. How do you stay creative and kind of stay passionate about building these and telling these stories?
For me, it's the space. We have a space here at the Post House, and we put a lot of time and attention into our space and creating like, this is for editing, period. We do nothing else here but edit in this room. And the same thing for the other disciplines here. But then it's also having all of the team members around so we can pop into each other's rooms and watch stuff down. And the team has been together for a while. And so you kind of understand each other's creative sensibilities and how to speak into something. And so for me, it's the space, it's the team, and it's always having that mix of project with a long form project and commercial project back to long form. And some that can get tiring, but mostly it just keeps me creatively engaged and on the specific projects. And so, you know, like you mentioned, the tight deadlines, and especially in the commercial world, and, you know, feature, once things have to get done, they have to get done. You don't have, in editing, you don't have a lot of time to wait on your creative genius to come around and to endow you with inspiration. You have to go now. And so it's also a process of years of process of being able to get yourself into that creative space when you need to get to that creative space, because we don't have time to wait. And so for me, all of that is the space, the team, the conversations, what you watch, what you don't watch, what you listen to, how you set up your life. You know, this isn't just a punch in, punch out, especially when you're working with other creatives on creative projects, needing to be creative on demand. You kind of have to set your life up to be able to execute on that. And so it's everything. It's all how you kind of approach your life, your craft, your passion.
Incredible, Lucas. Looking towards the future, are there any projects or genres you're particularly excited to explore?
I mean, it's, you know, doc is my heartbeat. And so I love living in doc. I think there's a super interesting a feature that I'm cutting now. There's super interesting crossover where, and this isn't obviously the first film to do this, but there's an interesting crossover where you, as an audience member, you're like, is this doc or is this not? And that's really fun to kind of mess with people. And like under the subject matter that this one is, it's like really fun to kind of mess with people, the audience, and to like make them kind of second guess what like they're seeing and feel. So that is a kind of a subgenre, I'll say, of doc that I'm having a lot of fun doing. We start a multi-hour doc series for one of the major streamers shortly, and that's going to go over years, 2 or 3 years of production and post-production running alongside. And so I'm really excited. You know, we've done some series, but not over essentially a 4-year period. Like they've already shot a lot and they will shoot us. So 4 or 5 years of production. I've never really worked on a project that has had that long of production from a live capture standpoint. You know, in Lions, there's archival, and you can argue that went back to 1993 is when that film started. But no, truly cameras up to cameras down. So I'm really excited to explore kind of a longer period of time that is bookended by events that will be really fun to kind of see how characters ebb and flow and morph throughout these years between these two bookended events. And so I think those are the things I'm always interested in, like really cutting deeply personal character study docs and seeing, somebody's arc and personality change over years and over time. They start off believing X and they end up not believing. It's like always interesting to see how humans change and evolve. And so I'm always looking for like those, character study doc pieces as well. So those are the things that are like on my immediate horizon and I'm always keeping a lookout for.
That's amazing. Lucas, just to finish up, for listeners that want to find you, watch more of your work, learn more about your post operation, where can folks find you and reach out?
Yeah, I'm on the place I'm the most active on is Instagram, Lucas J. Harger, at Lucas J. Harger. I have a personal website that's just lucasjharger.com. And then the studio site, the post house, is brutonstrobey.com/outpost. And then there's like contact info in all those places. And so definitely in email, in Instagram DMs quite often. So that's the place.
Lucas, thanks so much for sharing your story and the stories that you make. Really inspiring. The films are awesome. Lions of Mesopotamia, Clemente, and all of the other amazing work that you do. Thanks so much for joining me on Production.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
On Production is brought to you by Rapbook. With automated time card calculations, real-time production accounting, and payroll you can run with just a click, Rapbook makes it easier than ever to manage your entire production from one login. To learn more about how Rapbook is transforming payroll and production accounting, check out our website at rapbook.com.